Alrighty guys, welcome to this video. Let's kind of finish up the app here and get it running. The problem that we have right now is when we run it, it works, right? But, I type in whatever, hit send. Okay, it updates, everything's good. I refresh, everything's good. But the problem is, if I were to do this, terminate the server, then run it again, it's all gone. So it doesn't remember the chat history. Now that may or may not be the way you want it to work, but this isn't good, especially for. I guess this would be good if you want a temporary thing where you chat and then you leave. But we got to get it to where it will save it forever. Okay, and we're going to do that with databases. So we're going to be using MLab. It's an online database instead of a PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL or any other type of database. This is actually a cloud type database, which is pretty cool. And we're going to be using what's called MongoDB to do that. These guys offer a 500 megabyte free account, so it's everything we need and more. Now, the main thing is just there's two types of databases. You have SQL and no SQL. SQL is kind of it's a structured query language, right? So all the database tables and rows and everything is all structured. The database has a specific structure that is set up, and all the apps that use it know that structure and follow it. With no SQL, there's really no structure. You just put a bunch of data together in what's called collections, and the apps will go out there and grab what's needed in that no SQL structure. They both have their pros and cons, but what we're going to be creating here in MLab is a no SQL type database. Okay. Anyways, an SQL, because of the structure, I guess you could consider it's kind of like it just does everything for you. Not that it does everything for you, but it's easier to find things just because there's that structure. No SQL is just a bunch of stuff is thrown together. But like I said, they both have their pros and cons depending on what you're going to use. So we're going to be using this MongoDB. Okay, and you want to hit sign up. So it's mlab.com. Okay, you're going to put in your name, put in your email, put in a username, put in a password, accept it, and then create the account. Okay, and then you are going to have to, they're going to send an email out to you, and you're going to have to go out there and verify your email address. Because if you don't verify the email address, it's not going to allow you to create new databases and such. All right, now this is the one I was playing around with, but I'm going to create another one here. Okay, so I'm going to create new. I'm going to call this one, I guess, Node Chat App. Now, I wonder if it's, so here it's going to give you a choice of like Google, Amazon, and I think a Microsoft thing. I chose Amazon, and I don't know if now it gives me the choice. Yeah, I'll just hit create new. Dang, it sucks because I can't show you what you're going to see. So I'm going to call it Node Chat App. Okay, the different choices you'll have, I'll just choose Amazon. Or, it really doesn't matter what you choose. They all have free options, but I went with Amazon. Okay, and you want the free sandbox type. Again, I can't show you that. I thought I'd be able to, which I can't, which is kind of annoying. But you want the free sandbox because you obviously don't want to pay. Okay, and then the local time zone, I'm just going to stick with probably East Virginia. Well, Oregon, West. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to stick with that. Okay, and then give it a name. And you know what here? I wonder. Frustrating. Okay, whatever. So we pick all that. I'm going to hit create new environment. Oh, wait, maybe it doesn't let me. Hold on, I'm going to pause here and figure this out because this is kind of weird. Okay, actually, I think I'm just stupid here. I hit create new for create environments. So I'm going to delete this. All right, so we want create new up here, not create new down here. That is environments. I want to create new database. There we go. So create new. Ah, there we go. Beautiful. So Amazon Web Service or Google Cloud or Microsoft, they're all the same. They all have this free sandbox. So I just went with Amazon. I chose free sandbox. Sorry to waste your time on that, guys. And then that's fine. So I'm going to hit continue. US East, that's fine. I don't really want to go with Europe. Hit continue. Database name, I'm going to call it Node Chat App. Hit continue. Submit the order. It's all free, so you don't have to pay anything. Happy days. Wait for a couple of years. All right. Now, again, these are online databases, so you don't have to have them on your host. You can host everything separately off with these guys, and they control all of that for you, which is kind of cool. All right, so now that I'm there, we got to set up a user so we can access this. Right, so I'm going to click on the database that I just created. Okay, now this is going to give us basically the URL to the database. We'll be using that later. But we're going to come down here and go to users, and I'm going to add a new database user. I'll call it admin. My password will be ABC123. Nothing too secure. This is all just testing, so I don't really care. Make read only, definitely not, because we want to make sure this user has the power to do whatever they need to do. We're going to hit create. All right, so we created that. Now, there is a plugin. It's called mongoosejs.com. This is what we're going to be using to manipulate and interact with this database. This object modeling library here is pretty amazing, and it makes working with databases pretty simple. So this is what we're going to be using, FYI. All right, so now we got the database. We want to keep this open because later we're going to need to access this link to it. So now what you need to do is go back to the folder. Right, so I went into my project folder, and we need to install Mongoose. So we'll be able to communicate with the database. So npm install -s, so it goes into the packages file, Mongoose. Okay, it's going to go out there, grab it, do what it needs to do, and now you'll have Mongoose, which is going to allow you to connect to this Mongo database. Okay. All right, so now we're here, and I'm going to grab this and copy it. Now you can see that it says database user here and database password, so you have to feed that in, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go back into my server.js file here, and right above messages, I'm going to set up this variable. I'm going to call it dbURL, capitalize the URL there, and then I'm going to put it inside of quotes. Okay, now remember the database user for me was admin, and the password was ABC123. Now you may be going, wait a minute, is this very secure? Because this is going to be shown up when you view source, right? Yeah, you're correct. And there is some things we can do to secure that, and that's going to be one of the last things we'll do here. But just be aware. Okay, now we're going to connect to the database to make sure that it works. Okay, and so we're going to stay here inside of server. So we're going to come down here right above the server variable. We're going to type in mongoose.connect. Okay, and we're going to connect using that database URL variable. And then we're going to run a function. And if there's any errors, we're going to print them out on the page. Okay, so we're going to say console.log. We're going to say Mongo database connected. And if there's any errors, we will print them out to the page as well. Because if there's errors, that's going to help us actually figure out how to fix them. Okay, now that we're actually using this though, hopefully you noticed that, hey, I think didn't we forget something? Yeah, we did right up here, right? We didn't include Mongoose. All right, so right under here, doesn't really matter where. We're going to say variable mongoose is going to be equal to, and we're going to throw in the mongoose library. Okay. All right, so now that we've done that, now I can come down here and this makes a little more sense. Now we're using that mongoose library, we're using the connect method that it gives us. We're going to connect using that database URL, and if it connects, we're going to print out to the page that, hey, it's connected. If not, it'll give us an error. All right, now let's see if it comes up. So I'm going to say nodemon server.js. Okay, there we go. And it connected. Went through, connected, and because it gave us null, that means that there was no errors. So we know it's connecting to our database correctly, which is awesome. All right, now even though this is a NoSQL database, we still need to set up what's called a model and a schema, just so Mongo database is going to have an idea of what to expect. We got to set it up, and then also once we set up that model and schema, then we're going to be able to mess with the database as needed. All right, so I'm going to come back here inside of servers, and inside, over above this messages variable here, we're going to set up the schema and the model. All right. It's common practice, and I think you have to do this for a capital variable here. It means it's going to be a model. Okay, so variable message is going to be equal to mongoose.model message. We're going to call it message. Okay. And now this model is just going to be telling Mongoose basically what is going to be inside of our database and what kind of things we're going to be storing in it. Okay, so we're going to be storing in, call it a column or a row or whatever, a record of something with name, and it's going to be a string. Okay, because when you type in your name, it's a string. And we're also going to be typing in a message, and that's going to be a string as well. Right, so that's letting the app know and letting Mongoose know what kind of a database we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be dealing with a database that is going to have a name with a string and then a message that's going to be a string type as well. Okay, now that we've created the model, we've let Mongoose know what kind of a database we're going to be dealing with. We're going to come down here to the post. Okay, and now instead of, putting it out to the body and stuff and doing all these different things, we need to save what's been typed into the database. All right, so I'm going to hit enter a couple times. We're going to set up a new variable. I'm going to call it message. And we're going to let it know that, okay, we're using that model that we just set up. So new message. Okay, in other words, basically a new entry into that database using this model up here that we created. Okay, and we're going to feed into it the body. Remember the request body, that's basically the name and the message from the object here. Okay. All right, and then we're going to say message.save. That's going to save it to the database. Now, if there's an error, we're going to run a function. Well, not yet. This is just passing in if an error exists. So we need to have that if statement. So if the error exists, we're going to send a status of 500. That's basically the error code of it not being able to be saved to the database. Okay, but if there is no error, okay, so if there is an error, it's going to send the status of 500, but if there wasn't an error, that means it worked. If it was saved to the database, then we basically want to do all this. So I'm going to cut that and paste it in there. Tab this stuff over. Okay, so it'll push the body of the request, right, into that array. It'll create that, what we talked about last video. It's going to create that event, that message event, that will let all the other clients know that, hey, there's a new message, and then it'll all force them to reload. And then it will send that status of 200, which is the OK status. All right. Okay, so sets up that new variable called message. It's basically setting it up using that model to be saved inside of the database. Okay, it's taking the name and the body, right, or the name and the message, and then it saves it to the database. And then it checks to see if there was an error. If there was an error, it's going to send that status. If there wasn't an error and it saved correctly to the database, it's going to do everything it needs to post it to the page. Okay, so now we can test this to see if it's going to go to the database or not. Save. We're going to keep this open because we want to see if new things come to this. So this is the one we're using, so I'm going to click into it, and we should see some new collections here if this works. All right, so I'm going to refresh. Okay, I'm going to type in Frederick. Hit send. Okay, it posted there. We can check to see if there's any errors. We're still getting mixed panel, that's fine. And now if we come over here, refresh, and then there we go. We have a collection. So remember, NoSQL is set up of collections instead of tables and things like that. So now I can go inside of here and go, okay, cool, here's that collection. So inside of these collections is our documents. Okay, and these documents hold everything that's inside of that database. So it has an ID, okay, and then name is Frederick and message is hello, I like food. So cool, it's working. It got posted to our database. Happy days. Okay, now we need to get rid of this, right? These are the default messages that show up just to see it, make sure it's working. Like this wasn't posted, this was just pulled from the code. This actually was posted, so we need to get rid of Fred and George here. So we're going to come in here Now, we don't really want to use this anymore, right? We're not going to be using this object, this array, because we want to pull all the messages and put all the messages inside this database. We don't want to worry about this object here that we've been using for the whole time. So we're going to come here and we're not going to push that anymore. We're not going to push it onto that array. We're not going to put it onto this array anymore. So we're going to get rid of that. Okay, and then we'll come into app.get. Okay, and we're not going to respond with this, right? We're going to pull it from the database. We want to get all the messages that are in the database and display those to the page. So we're going to use the model right up here so we can access the database. So message.find. And what we're going to look for is just everything. Okay, now this is where you would put in conditions, like if I was looking for maybe all of the names that were Fred or all the names that were Bill or something. But we don't want that. We want it to pull everything. So we're just going to keep this, the curly brackets blank. Okay, so we're going to find everything inside the database is basically what we're doing there. If there's an error, or we're going to grab any errors and we're going to grab the messages and then we're going to run a function with those. Okay, and what we're going to do is take that response and send it to messages. Okay, so now because we're sending what it finds inside the database to the page with that line, now we don't even need this anymore. We're not using arrays anymore. We're just pulling everything from the database and we're doing basically everything we're doing, we're just doing from the database. Okay, so now we can, is it running? Yep, it's still running. So we can come over here, kind of refresh. Okay, Fred and George are gone, but Frederick, hello, I look like food, is there because it's pulling that from the database. So now that we're telling it over here, right, go find all the messages inside the database and send them to the page. So now when I start typing in new things, you know, that gets posted. George comes back in. Okay, that get posted. Great. I come back over here to the database. I'm going to let's go back here. Go to the collections. There's 3 messages now, 3 documents. Okay, and there's the 3, Fred, George, and Frederick. So it's all getting pulled from the database. And now it's saved. So if I come over here and I kill the server, okay, and then I run it again, before all of that would have been erased, but now because it's in the database, it stays. Okay, cool. So that's about it now. I mean, the chat app is basically done. It's using the database. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're like, well, I want to start over, well, you can always just delete all the documents in the collection, right? So if you came in from the home, you get into your database, you go into your collection, and then you can just delete all the documents in the collection and just hit delete. Okay, they're all gone. So now if I come back here and refresh, there's nothing there because I just emptied the database. All right, cool. So like I said, we're done. You can mess with this however you want. If it looks just like this, that's fine. If you want to add some different styles, go for it. But really what I'm going to be grading on is functionality, just to make sure that this works the way it should. All right, so we got that set up. Now the problem is, right, this isn't live. If I were to give this link to anyone, they wouldn't be able to see it. Now I actually tried this. I took all the files that were in here. Oops, not in there. Went into node chat, uploaded all this stuff to inner server and tried to run it. Didn't think it would, and I was correct. It didn't run. So you do need to have an environment that's built for Node.js apps, which is Heroku, right? So, yay. And I'm not going to lie, this took a while to figure out, guys, so be grateful. Be happy that I did all the hard work for you. All right, so this is the test one that I got working. I'm going to just log out. So you want to log into your Heroku account. If you don't have one, sign up. But you should have one because of the Python app that we did. Okay, sign up, get ready to go, get logged in. Just make sure that you can get in here. All right, now, if we take a look at some of this code, you can already start to guess that some of this probably wouldn't work. Like right here, when I say go to localhost 3000 messages, well, what if the port 3000 on Heroku doesn't exist? Well, then it's going to give us an error, and it's not going to work. You know, just things that are dependent on things locally, they're not going to work on Heroku because it's a completely different environment once we get it up there. All right, so I'm going to close this here because we know it's working the way we want. So I think what I'm going to do first is just kind of show you what happens when we upload it. And then kind of show you how I troubleshooted through this and how I was able to use the different errors and such that I was getting to be able to figure this out. So let's see if it lets, not sure if it's going to let me do this, but first thing we got to do is Heroku create, right? And I'm not sure if it's going to let us. Okay, it did. Now, actually, the first thing you got to do if you haven't in a while is do Heroku login. Right, put in your username, which is your email, put in your password, and then make sure you're logged in. Once you're logged in, do Heroku create, and then it's going to create an app basically that's attached to, oh, you know what, actually I think I might have done something too fast. Yep, I did it wrong, guys. I'm horrible. Don't do that. I got to go back here because we need to create the Git repository. That was another thing that I messed up. So this floating forest, I'm going to click on it. This is good to know anyways because this is how you can delete stuff. I'm going to go to settings. You just scroll down here and do delete app. And I'm going to type in the app's name. I'll delete it. So before you create the app, you have to do the Git repository. And it took me actually a while to figure that out. And that's what we're going to do first. So I'm going to say git init. Okay, and what that does, and you may or may not see this. Let me get rid of this here. Inside of this folder, it creates this Git folder. If you can't see it, it's just because it's a hidden folder and I wouldn't worry about it too much. You should be able to say like view, I don't know. The way I do it is I type in folder and I go to folder options. I go to view and then I say show hidden files, folders, and drives. I select that and then hit OK. So it's there. Now it's created that Git repository. That needs to be there so I can add everything to it and then upload it to Heroku. If you don't do it in that order, it won't work. So now that I've initialized it, I'm going to say git. Oh, not yet. I'm kind of jumping all over the place right now. That's okay. It's all right. So now what we need to do is create a file that tells Heroku to leave certain folders alone, because when we add things to our Git repository, we don't want it to add the modules, the node modules or modules, because what we want it to do is skip this stuff because we don't want it to upload it to Heroku, because what it's going to do is use this package JSON file to know what type of add-ons to install. So just as long as our package JSON is fine, when we upload, it'll install all the plugins and stuff. It doesn't need this module folder to do that. So what we need to do is create a file that tells it to ignore the node modules folder and the modules folder and only upload this stuff, and then install everything that it says here on the package JSON. Okay, so like I said, I'm kind of jumping around right now, but I'm going to do that. So I'm going to right click here. You just need to create a new file. I'm going to say new text file. It's kind of weird how you have to do this, and I'm going to call it .getignore. Then I'm going to get rid of the txt, and I'm going to leave that period there. Okay, and then it says, hey, it's going to freak out. Are you okay? And then I hit yes. And so that's how you get it to where you can create that without an extension. Okay, you leave that period at the end. If you don't, like if I were to rename this and just hit enter, it works now. But if I were to go new text and I call it just getignore, and I hit enter, and I go, well, actually, I don't want that .txt, and I get rid of it. Oh, it worked that time. Weird. Didn't before. Whatever. Cool. All right, so now that I've... Oh, wait. That's not right, though. It needs to be period. Okay, and that's usually what it's going to do. You must type a file name, and it's going to freak out. And so I just go rename, put the period in front, getignore, and then I put a period at the end and hit enter, and then it creates what I need. Okay, now inside of here, I need to say what folders it needs to ignore. So the folders that it's going to ignore, you put a slash here. So it's going to ignore node modules. Okay, and it's going to ignore modules. That's what we did kind of a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to save that. So now it knows when I create this Git repository to ignore node modules and modules, which are these two folders here. Because we don't need those, it's just a waste of space on Heroku, and it's going to make your uploading take a lot longer. Okay. All right. Now I don't think the init doing that before is a big deal, but I'll do it again just for fun. Okay, looks like reinitialized, so we're fine. Okay, so now I can say git add space period, and that's going to add everything inside of here into my Git repository except for these two folders that I told it to ignore. Okay, and then it's going to give me these errors about LF and CRLF, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to worry about that. We're okay. So then we're going to say git commit /m, and then you give it some sort of comment. So I'll just say first commit. Doesn't really matter what you put there. Okay, and then it adds all of those files into, and notice how it skipped the folders, right? It didn't create anything for the folders. Okay, once I've committed those, now I can say git push Heroku master. Just kidding. Oh, I don't think I created the Heroku app yet. I did that before and totally forgot. Yep, so I haven't done that yet. So you'll probably get some sort of error like that, and that's fine. So we committed it, we're good. Now we just do Heroku create. There we go. Now that it's created, we should be able, and if we want to, we can do it again. Just git add. Okay, it doesn't do anything because there's nothing to add. Git commit -m. Don't worry, you'll be memorizing this before the time's out. I'll just say commit. Okay, nothing to commit. In other words, everything's good. So now we can say git push Heroku master. All right, so now it's going to grab the packages file, see what needs to be installed. It's going to go in there, install all of the different dependencies that it has, all of the different plugins and libraries that I used. It's basically going to make a complete copy of what I had on my computer. And then it's going to upload everything else up there. Build succeeded, good. Okay, and then it says everything's done. So I can say Heroku push, or I know Heroku open, and that's going to open it up in here. And that's my app here. That's my app's URL, secret retreat 51304. And now it's not going to work. I can already tell you it's not going to work because it's trying to do a bunch of stuff that it could only do on the local host. So, like I said, I'm going to show you what I did to kind of figure this out. So if things aren't working on your end, you're going to be able to do kind of similar steps, be able to get it to work. So I just kind of wait, and right now I can already tell you what's going wrong is it's trying to access this on port 3000 because that's what I have defined here. Like I told it to go to localhost 3000. Here I've set it up for the HTTP server to listen on the 3000 port. Well, port 3000 doesn't exist on Heroku. So it's still trying to load it on 3000. Nothing's coming up, and so it just dies. And it's like, okay, it just didn't work. So if I try to load it again, it's just not going to work. So empty response. So if you get these types of errors and you're like, I'm not really sure what to do, you can say Heroku logs, and this will give you the server logs. So it says MongoDB connected. So even though we've uploaded it to Heroku, we know that the database is connecting fine. Okay, but really what you want to pay attention to is right up, just kind of go through line by line. So, okay, it has all the stuff that's been related or been released. It has what it's been scaled, it's been deployed, the build succeeded, great. It starts the process with command npm start. We know that has an issue. That's actually wrong. Well, I know it just because I've been playing around a lot. And then it says servers on port 3000, error waiting for process to terminate, no child processes, boot timeout, web process failed to bind to port within 60 seconds of launch. Right here we have an application error, so that means it isn't working. So really what I ended up doing is I looked for these specific errors, and right here, this error R10, I Googled that and I took a look at it. And then because of Googling that, it told me that, hey, if you're trying to use a port that isn't a Heroku port, it's not going to work. And so I was able to figure it out from there. Okay, also it says starting process with command npm start. That's wrong. Remember, we want it to start with server, right? We have server.js. That's the file that starts everything. So we're going to need to fix that as well. So that's all I wanted to show, is just how to kind of take a look at the logs to get an idea of why it isn't working if it's not. Okay, so it says error. It failed to bind to the port. In other words, we have an issue with the port. So it stops the process, everything dies. But we do know that database connected, but then everything else just kind of dies and it didn't work. So again, Heroku logs. Now sometimes if you update everything and things still aren't working, but you know they're right, you can say Heroku restart. And what that'll do is it kind of restarts everything, kind of clears the cache, and then gets it ready to go. All right, so now I know that, at least I know that the database is connected. We're good for there, but I need to kind of start fixing all of this stuff. Okay. All right, so we know the port is an issue, and this is what I found Googling around. So right here is where we're telling it where to listen. We're saying, look, take this HTTP server that we've created and have it work on port 3000. Well, we know that doesn't work. So what we need to do is say use the environment's host or the environment's port that you're on or 3000. So the way you do that is you say process.environment env dot port, and that needs to be capitalized, or 3000. And this has to be in this order. This is another thing that took me forever. I had 3000 here first, I had 3000 over here on the left, and then this, and it always used 3000 first, and it never went to this part. So make sure you have process.env.port first. So it'll try to use the port of the environment that it's on, and if that doesn't work, then it'll try 3000. Okay. So this is what it said. This is how you tell it to use the Heroku port. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, the other issue we have, right, is over here in index. We're telling it to go to the local host on port 3000 and go to messages. Well, that no longer works when you're on Heroku. Localhost, from what I understand, doesn't work. Actually, I'm gonna try actually just doing this, getting rid of the port, and see if that works. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then we'll need to try something else. We'll come back to this if it doesn't work. Okay. Now we need to, this may or may not work, but it's kind of important. So if I come in here and I say node-v, it tells me the version of Node that I'm working that I'm using. And if I want Heroku to use exactly the same version that I am, which is kind of a good idea because you'll know for a fact that the chances of it to work is a lot more likely, then what we need to do is come in here and we're going to open up the package.json file. I'm going to open that in brackets. Okay, we have body parser, express, mongoose, socket. That's good that all those got added with the -s. Okay, and what I'm going to do is right here, or it can be, actually I could just do it here. Just put a comma, and I'm going to say the engines should be able to just put it there. Yep. Okay, so the engines is what I'm going to be using is Node 8.94. All right, so you've defined here the engine you're going to use is Node version 8.9.4. And that's because that's the same version I'm using. So it's a good idea to throw that inside your package file. Now, of course, be careful if you are to reprint out your package file, it's going to overwrite that. So this is one of the last things that you're going to do here. Okay. All right, now we need to do kind of similar thing to what we did here is I'm going to create a new file. I call it proc file and get rid of the .txx. Okay, now because I didn't have a dot at the beginning, I could just get rid of the extension and say I'm fine, and it just makes it exactly the type of file that I need it to be. So I'm going to open with this with brackets too, and I'm going to say web:/node server.js. So remember, I don't know if it's still up, right up here it says starting process with command npm start. I haven't tested that, to be honest. I'm not sure if that works, but I know that this will. What this is saying is this is going to be the command that Heroku uses to launch your app. So it knows, okay, it's using a web server, and then I'm going to run the command node server.js. Well, that's what I've been doing the whole time to get my server running. So it's going to use the command node server.js. So it will run this file to get everything up and running. So that's what that proc file does. Heroku finds it, and then it uses whatever you put in there to start up your app. All right, so now that I did that, I think we're close. Let's take a look and see if this works. If it doesn't, we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm going to scroll down here. Just for fun, I'm going to say Heroku restart. Didn't really need to do that, but did it anyways. We're going to say get add 0 or dot. Okay, it gives me the CRLF thing. Don't really care about that. Get commit -m. I can just say retry. Doesn't really matter what I put there. Okay, and it tells me 4 files were changed, 7 insertions, 3 deletions, blah, blah, blah. And it shows that I created that proc file. Just got everything new that I did. And now I can say get push Heroku master. So you have to do that every time. Whenever you make changes, you have to add them, and then you commit them to that Git repository, and then you use that repository to upload it up to Heroku. And you can see it went a lot faster that time because a lot of the stuff had already been done. All right, cool. Now it loaded. I can say Heroku logs. Okay. That's interesting that it still gave me that, but it looks like it didn't really matter. Right. Okay, there it is. I guess this is probably old logs. So servers on port 487. So okay, it's using the new Heroku port, so that's good. Yeah, I'm still getting kind of the same errors, but everything's loading, so that's okay. So let's test it. I'm sending and nothing's happening. So now I can hit F12. Okay. It says failed to load resource. The server responded with the status of 404. Okay. Okay, the page at blah, blah, blah was loaded over HTTPS. Okay, but the request an insecure XML HTTP request endpoint localhost messages. So basically, this is called mixed content when you have a secure connection with HTTPS and then you have it dealing with an unsecure connection with HTTP. So remember, this is the one thing that I wasn't sure was going to make an issue, but it looks like it is. So one thing I could try, and I'm doing this just because I want to test it here, is I can go back to my index and I can throw S's in there. And we'll see if that works. I'm guessing, to be honest, it probably won't. All right, so I added the changes, I committed them, and then I'm re-uploading. And we'll see if it will like that, what we just did here. And if not, that's fine. I know it works. But again, I'm just wanting to test this here. All right, so put in Dave. All right. All right, so connection refused, failed to load resource. Yeah, it's not like in localhost. So it looks like it's something that we just can't do. So that's fine. So what I need to do is I know, well, okay, that's not working, but what if I type in messages here? All right, cool. So this actually is giving me that object. It's empty because it's not pulling it from the database. There's nothing in there yet, but I can use this. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to throw this into my code. instead. Put in the full URL of that messages page. Okay, now let's see what happens. Now, if you don't want to type all this out, you can press up on your keyboard and it'll go through the different things that you've done. That makes it a little bit faster. I don't know if you can do that on a Mac, but on a PC at least that'll work. Okay, let's see how we are doing now. Loads, that's good. Dave, hi. Boo, yeah. F12, no mix. There's that mixed panel error again, but that's okay. That just has to do with jQuery, or I don't know, something that we're pulling from Bootstrap. So don't really care about that. But it looks like it's working. So now I can give this to someone else and they can come to it. I see Dave says hi. Dude comes in. What's up, man? Hit send. Works. Then I come back over to Dave's view. That came in as well. So it looks like we're doing what needs to be done. Now we have an issue, and it's kind of a big one. So if I view the source, I'd hit Control U on a Mac, or not on a Mac, Control U on PC, or I can right click and do View Page Source. I see on my code here. Cool. None of this is really that big of a deal. But if I do come into I don't have it linked here. But if I, no. Sorry, guys. What we'll do is if I came in here and I was a bot and I found out that, server.js existed, well, it can go here and look, my database information is here, and that's not good. And if you program a bot to scour the web, you can look for server.js, and then you can look for MongoDB, and if it's on the page, then you can just pull username and passwords from these files, which is not good. So what we need to do is create on Heroku what's called an environmental variable. An environmental variable, which means that you can basically create variables that are secure and they're hidden, and then you can use them in your code. All right, so to do that, you come over here, and I'm going to type Heroku config :set, and then the name of the variable. The common one that's used a lot is Mongo, and it's all uppercase. Mongo lab _URI. Doesn't have to be that. It can be whatever you want. But that's what I'm going to have here. And I'm going to say equals. And then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to grab that link to the database, which was, oh no, not in here. Sorry. I'm going to grab it in here because this is already set up to where we want it to be. So I'm going to go into server, come over here, and I'm going to grab this. So copy it here. You can't just do Control V. DOS is weird. So I have to right click and do paste. Okay, so this is allowing me to set a variable that can be accessed anywhere by any app on this Heroku site, on this Heroku app. So Heroku config set, it's going to set this URL. What the heck am I saying? Not URL. This variable. And it's going to set it equal to the link to my database where it's hosted. Okay, the database URL. All right, so once I paste that in there, I'm going to hit enter. It's going to go out there and it's going to set this variable equal to that. So now in my code I can use it and it keeps it secret. So now I can come back here and I can get rid of this, so now it's not exposed. And I can say, all right, my database URL is going to be equal to process. This should look kind of familiar, right? Dot environment, Mongo lab underscore URI. So this says, okay, instead of having it printed out here, I now have it saved inside of Heroku and it's secure now and it's safe. So I say use this date or this variable called Mongo lab underscore URL inside of my environment. Use that to connect when I connect down here. So now I can save that. And we'll commit everything and do our thing. So git add, git commit dash m. I can say I secured the database, right? Git push Heroku master. Wait a couple years here. Right, now I can say Heroku open. Uh-oh. Did something break? It looks like something broke. I may have misspelled something here. Let's go back and check. Let's check out our logs. I'm not seeing any like MongoDB connected. Oh, there we go. But that might be from before. Maybe I'll try Heroku restart. I wonder if I set that variable wrong. Okay, I'm an idiot, and you guys may have caught this, but it's Mongo Lab, not MonoGoGo, whatever the heck I had there. Now, one thing I want to show you is you can say Heroku config, and that will show you your environmental variables. So I have Mongo Lab, where in here I have MonoGo Lab, right? That's why it wasn't working. And the other one, I went and I found this. It's Heroku run print environment. So you can say Heroku run print environment, and this will list your environmental variables, like all of them. It runs a lot of different things. And then right here I can see it as well. So Mongo Lab URI. So that's how I kind of figured out what was going on. So Mongo Lab, make sure that matches up, right? So Heroku config. We got Mongo lab underscore URI. Mongo lab underscore URI. Okay, stupid mistake. But we all make them, right? So good. All right. Doing its thing. All right, so now Heroku open. Hopefully the dang thing will work now. And remember before, it wasn't showing anything that was in the database. Now it is, so it looks like we're good. I can write la land, never seen it, but whatever. Okay, it's there. Come over here, take a look at my messages. Okay, it has the 3 of them now, good. Now the main thing that I just fixed is now I can say server.js, open that up, and there it is protected. It's no longer in there in everyone's face. Cool. All right, so that's it, guys. So when you're done, grab this, copy it, grab your link here and bring it over into, I don't even know if I have it open, doesn't look like it. There we are. Hand it in, right, 9 through 11. Just finish it up. You're going to click on there and turn it in. Hit reply, turn it in, hit post, you're good to go. So this class is those 2 apps. Make sure you get the Python one and you get the Node.js. You have the rest of the quarter to finish them up, make all the tweaks you need to. If you got behind, great, you have time to finish it up. But you should have everything you need now to be able to finish these 2 apps up and to pass the course. If you have any questions, like usual, guys, let me know, and we'll talk to you later.